Well, hello again. This is Brian Copeland talking. Welcome to another edition of Copeland's Corner. If you're keeping count, which I am now doing, I hadn't been doing it, but now I am. This is episode number 160. So we've done 159 episodes of this podcast starting back in 2020. We're up to 160 today, and this is our fifth YouTube simulcast. So you can either listen to us as thousands of you are doing, listening to us over iTunes or over Spotify or over Amazon, or you can also go to YouTube and you can see our pretty faces. So what I'm asking folks to do is to register at YouTube to subscribe if you would. The reason being is that if we get 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, then we can do the show live. Because the way we do it right now is we record it on Wednesdays, then we drop it on Thursdays. And I want to do it live so that way we can get your interaction. You know, if you have a comment on something that one of the comics happens to say, or something I say, or you want to agree, you want to disagree, you want to ask a question, you can do that if we're doing the show live. If we're, as long as it's recorded, you can't. So right now we're right at about 300 subscribers. So we need to get 1,000. So it doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't subject you to like a bunch of spam or anything. We don't bother you. So if you could do that, and if you could get your friends to do that, I would really appreciate it. And I think it'll add a whole new element to the show and make the show a lot more fun. So we got a great lineup of comics today. We'll get to them in just a minute. I wanted to start with something first. There has been another lawsuit filed against McDonald's, this one in San Francisco, of a woman burning herself with hot McDonald's coffee. Now, you may remember the case of Stella Lieback, I believe her name was, back in 1994, that made international news because she spilled coffee on herself, burned herself, and ended up getting a $2.7 million verdict from a jury when she sued McDonald's. And the corporate entities in this country use that as an excuse for tort reform to make it harder to sue. And the interesting thing is that most people don't know the facts of that case. So I thought I would tell you what the facts of that case are, so you know as you watch what happens with this case that's making its way now. Ms. Lieback was in her 80s. I think she was with her son or her grandson. They were going through the drive-thru at McDonald's. She ordered some coffee. The lid wasn't on tight enough, or the coffee was so hot that the cup was flexible, something. And she ended up spilling it in her lap. And the coffee was so hot that she ended up getting second and third degree burns. People don't realize that. That woman got second and third degree burns from the heat of that coffee. So she goes to the hospital. She had to have skin grafts. You know, this wasn't just the case of her spilling coffee, decided she's going to sue. This woman had to go to the hospital and had to have skin grafts. So once her skin grafts are done and her medical attention is taken care of, she asks McDonald's to pay the cost of her medical bills. That's all she wanted, was the cost of her medical bills, which was $20,000. And McDonald's said no. They said no, they would not pay it. And they offered her some pittance that wasn't anywhere close to the medical bills. And that's why it is that she sued. Well, when she sued, what they found out was that this had happened before. And this had happened to several dozen people who had had severe burns because of McDonald's coffee. And what McDonald's did was they did a cost benefit analysis to figure out what the profit potential was by having the coffee hotter, because I guess you get more coffee out of a bean if it's hotter or something, versus how much they'd have to pay out from people who were getting burned. And they made the decision that they'll just keep making the coffee hot, because what they got to pay out in settlements, they can just pay out a pittance, and it's nothing compared to how much money they'll make by continuing to have their coffee so hot. So they knew this was not a fluke. This was not the only time this had happened. This had happened dozens of times. And they figured out how much money they had paid out and how much money they were making. And so they decided not to do anything about the problem. So once all this came out in court, what the jury decided was to punish McDonald's with punitive damages in the amount of $2.7 million. And where they got that figure was that's how much in 1994 McDonald's was making worldwide in one day from selling coffee. It was just from selling coffee for one day. They figured one day's profit from coffee is what they owed. They owed this woman for what it is she went through. So there was an appellate process, and eventually it all got thrown out on appeal, and she got nothing. She ended up getting nothing. Didn't even get her 20 grand for her medical expenses. But when you hear about this case now, there's so much folklore around this case. Is that some woman spilled coffee on herself and just it's like winning the lottery. And they use this as an excuse for tort reform to make it harder for people to file lawsuits based on product liability cases. And they completely misconstrued it. And most of the things you've probably heard about this case and about this being some kind of a frivolous case is based upon what the corporate entities in this country, the propaganda and the disinformation that they put out in order to get you on their side and against the side of consumers like this woman who was injured. So the case you got now in San Francisco, it's a similar thing. Woman was going through a drive-through, another elderly woman in her 80s. She went to take a sip of the coffee. The lid was not on properly. Coffee spilled in her crotch. She got severe burns. She, at the time she burned herself, she asked for help from employees and from the manager. And this is based on her lawsuit. She asked 3 people, employees and managers, and no one would help her. So she ended up having to go to the hospital. She's got hospital bills. She's got medical follow-up bills, and she has filed a suit. So keep all that, as well as the history of this case, in mind as this goes forward. Because I'm looking at headlines today, and the headlines about this story today are, here we go again, another woman suing for spilling coffee on herself. And it's much more severe than that. It's not just spilling coffee on herself. I mean, think about how hot that had to be in order for her to need skin grafts, for her to actually have to have skin grafts done. This, and the fact that they knew, that McDonald's knew, because it had happened several dozen times before, and they, rather than fix the problem, they just decided, you know what, we'll make more money by keeping it the way it is, and the couple of people who spill on themselves, we'll throw them a few bucks and it'll be over. So that's the story. Keep your eye on the case that's going forward now. And as you do so, keep in mind what happened back in 1994. This is part of the podcast that we call Headliners on the Headlines. Joining us this week, Daymon Ferguson, Justin Lockwood, who's not been with us in a while. Good to have you back. And Kate Robards is back, broadcasting from New York. She joined us last week, and I was able to hook her in to come back again. So welcome, everybody. So we were talking off the air before we started. Kate is from it's Orange, Texas. You're from?
That's right, Fruit City,
Orange, Texas. And when I first met you, probably 7 or 8 years ago, maybe now, you had this in the Bay Area. You had this real heavy accent. I thought, it's a Texas accent that actually I thought was charming. And I thought
it might have been longer than that, Brian. I think it was longer.
No, it wasn't longer than that because I'm not that old. So no, it was not longer than that.
Me either.
And now it's gone. You don't have it at all. You got rid of it.
Like I said, it's there. I just can pull it out whenever I want, depending on how much alcohol or who I'm talking to. But yeah, I want people to take me seriously. So I have taken voice and dialect classes.
So do people, and I'll ask you all this question, when you hear someone with a Southern accent, do you make an assumption that about them in terms of their politics, in terms of their level of intelligence? Is that something that we, especially those of us who are in California and in Northern California, is that something that we are conditioned to do?
I
think
don't more, but I did for a long time.
I think it happens, but I grew up in Northern California in small towns, and there is a rural, I don't know if you call it an accent or just a pattern of speech that is similar. And I got very used to hearing that. It actually took me a while to shed it too. So
Yeah.
I don't make those assumptions, but I also have family that lives in Texas, and damn. So
when I do my mother character, yeah, my friends here, like, they don't really sound like that. I'm like, they do. California, I've studied linguistics, and they have the most neutral out of all the states because it was so far away from the Midwest, Northern, you know, it's as far west as you can go. So now Californians are known for having the most neutral accent.
You know, most people who I know who have Southern accents who are able to lose it, they say it comes back when they're tired, when they're drunk, or if they're around people from their hometown.
Oh yeah.
Then it comes back.
But it's like, you know, there's the Long Island accent. You've got the, you know, I did a yoga class with someone from Long Island. They were like, what were you one? What were you two? And then my boyfriend's from Brooklyn, and he has this really thick Brooklyn accent. You've got the Midwesterners, don't you know Sarah Palin, right? I mean, and there's like 9 different dialects of Southern accents. Really? So I mean, I'm fascinated by accents, and even what, you know, Daymon was saying, rural versus like urban is a very real thing. You know, every little region has its own take.
Then there's the fake accent that Hollywood and newscasters made up, the transatlantic accent.
Yeah,
actually, it sounds like Hollywood and Hollywood newscasters made up in order to appeal to a certain demographic and
right,
feel like they're speaking directly to them.
Exactly. You can say white people, Brian. We're not going to get offended. That's who they're talking to. We're not going to get mad.
I want to start with a comedy topic today. Hassan Minhaj is getting all this grief because some things that he has said in his act regarding experiences that he's had as a Muslim American, while funny and brilliant social commentary, are true. And so there's a New Yorker article, as a matter of fact, I was just looking at, where they're asking the question, should his fans feel betrayed? And Whoopi Goldberg came to his defense yesterday or day before yesterday on The View, saying, look, comics, we all lie in our acts. We all exaggerate in our acts. That's what makes it funny. Otherwise, life is boring. So I will tell you this. In my stand-up act, yes, I lie. Absolutely, I've lied or exaggerated or stretched things. In my solo plays, I don't. In my solo plays, I tell the truth. I may move things around in terms of for narrative purposes, that maybe this didn't happen here, this happened before this happened, you know, those kinds of things. But everything I say on the stage is the truth, because it's a very different kind of work. But in terms of stand-up, yes, I lie to make the whole thing
is so silly. Forget stand-up. What about your own resume? What about your marriage? What about every relationship I've ever had? Like, I'm not telling the whole truth anywhere.
That's true, Justin. I lie to your wife all the time.
Yeah, constantly. That's how I'm still married. Look, this is so silly. You know, comics play like a part in this because we kind of like buy in and kind of like push our own mythology, where it's like, oh, I'm going up there and I'm doing therapy and I'm a truth teller and I'm this and I'm that. Comics are writers, and when you write, you exaggerate, you play up, you change the timing, you change the order of things. Like, this is a part of like the job that we don't talk about, is like the writing part, is the doing the work part,
especially the editing part.
Then it comes back and it bites us in the ass.
Yeah. I think it's also possible to tell the truth without giving an accurate accounting of what happened. You know, as a comic, you're trying to tell a larger truth in some cases. Sometimes you're just trying to get a laugh. But you're trying to tell a larger truth, and you know, sometimes you change events. I think it's fine unless you're specifically saying this person did X, Y, and then it becomes a problem because you're subjecting that person to something. But if you're just
someone.
Yeah, exactly. But if you're just saying, hey, you know, I think one time he claimed he got turned down for a date because he was a Muslim. I think that's one of the jokes. I don't remember the exact joke, but I think I remember that from the article. And maybe that exact incident didn't happen, but it has happened. to
Right.
people, it's a thing that we can talk about, and it's a thing that, you know, provides comedic fodder. Also, sounds a nice guy. I mean, he
Yeah.
really
And
is.
I mean, for me, there's so many different like angles of it, because you have the James Fry from A Million Tiny Pieces, or the Broken Pieces, and it's like if you're doing a memoir, it's still from your POV, but there's like facts that happen. Either you did go to the dentist, or you didn't, or you had, that was some of, the controversy. And then you've got people like Mike Daisey, whose solo shows I love. I'm a huge fan of for years. He had the This American Life solo show. It was on This American Life, about the making of like iPhones and Apple.
Yeah.
And when you tout it as journalism, even though I think he's a brilliant storyteller and I still see his work, it's under the veil of. And with Hassan, he's like, oh, they're like, well, they didn't include her POV. No, it's his show. It's his solo show. She can go do her own.
Exactly.
And it's for me, I'm like, it's for the effect of the story. Like, you get it. It's kind of like what you said, a composite character. He's not touting himself as a journalist,
Yeah, that's so right, Kate. And I saw Mike Daisey's show when I was living in Seattle. I saw him develop that show and I loved it. And then like 2 years later, when he takes it to This American Life, by the way, I don't know when This American Life decided that they were an absolute truth journalism show, but it seemed to be overnight, as if they're not basically a storytelling show. But that is the line. Stand-up is not journalism. Just like movies are not documentaries. Like, what you say you are makes a big difference.
Well, let me ask you, Kate, you talk a lot about your mother in your act. Are you lying?
It's so funny to have this conversation about my mother in particular, because my mother is a small town journalist. She's worked for Hearst for 30 years. Like, she was a reporter. Yeah, that's how, we were on the poverty line, and people who would want to produce my show were like, it's a white trash story. I'm like, my mother had an education. She just ended up being a single mom raising several kids in rural Texas, where it's all, chemical plants and oil plants. But I say this to say she was horrified, because she comes from a journalistic background where you have to quote people particularly, and she never editorializes herself. And I think that's why I'm always so big on, like, how do you feel? Like, we have a family member running for office. She's not, even if it's school board, she's not putting a poster, because she's like, no, I can't have biases. And it's like, these are things a lot of people don't think about. So I'm like, when I dip into my personal stuff with her, I have to make sure, these are my characters. And even with my brother, she was horrified. I have my own ethics around it, where when I talk about people, I like to ask them, hey, this is what I'm saying. Is it cool with you? I can still, if they say no, I can still do it. I'm not, but I do like to show my mom my work. And she, I think, is just horrified that people, laugh at even like, so one of my first jokes was about like One Stop Confederate Store, and my mom was like, they're so dumb they can't even make the rhyme. One Stop Confederate Shop, it's right there, just go for it, And
that's a great joke.
It is a great joke. And then when my mom would hear me, it's so funny, because she's like making fun of these people. Then when she would hear other people, she's like, but what they don't understand is, the people with that shop have been dropping out of high school, and they'd run a junkyard, and they haven't had a high school education for like 5 generations. So you're not understanding the contextualization. I'm like, no, I'm just laughing at them, and that's okay too. And she's like, but, I'm like, you do the journalism on it, or, help me with a long form book. But it's like, out of every joke, there's a million different versions of that. But you can't, that's not what we do. What we do is like poetry.
Damon, you have girls that you talk about a lot in your act.
I do.
I have some that I talk about in my act. Your girls, have they ever come to a show? Do they have a take?
They have come to a show. I did an outdoor, don't ever do those, but I did an outdoor show, and they came to that one, and I talk extensively, because they're both like competitive dancers. They're both really good dancers, and they train like athletes. They're little badasses. So I talk about that, and I talk about being a dance dad, and I juxtapose that with like a sports dad. So I'm cheering dance terms, yeah, posse, stuff like that. But and they're like, you don't do that. I'm like, yes, I know I don't do that, because your mom would kill me. But
that's what we were talking about before. It's like, it's the emotional aspect of it is the truth. That's an emotional truth. You want to, and then you don't. Because if we as comics actually lived our emotional truth, we'd be in prison.
Like, or at least locked up. Or a little while somewhere. But no, that's exactly your point, is, they're a little confused as to why I exaggerate my behavior at dance shows. Because yes, I'm 100% into their shows. I'm just so proud because they train like athletes. They really do. They're badasses. And I want to be cheering, but you know, I comport myself the way you're supposed to at at the ballet. I keep my shirt on.
That's right.
You don't tailgate.
No, don't. That's one of my jokes. Is the first thing I learned about ballet is when you go to the ballet, nobody tailgates. So.
I'm just now realizing we performed at Brian's show in San Francisco, his birthday show, because I'm like, I know that's a hilarious joke.
Thank you.
No,
well,
in terms of my stuff, I've got a solo show that I'm doing now called Grandma and Me about single parenting. It's about how when my mom died, my grandma raised the 5 of us by herself, and then later on, when I ended up getting divorced, I had my 3 by myself. And the only time this is my 5th show, and all of my stuff is autobiographical. I've never asked anybody for permission beforehand, but this one, because of the fact that it dealt with my children and it dealt with the fact that my divorce from their mother was very, very contentious. And I wanted to make sure that it wouldn't have been fair for me to talk about her or about that in this show, because she did not, there are 2 sides to every story. She didn't have a show to tell her side of the story. So I asked the kids how they felt about me doing the show, and they said, as long as you don't say anything bad about Mom, it's okay. And I said, fine, she's not in it, because that's not what the play's about. What the play's about is just the trials and tribulations of being a single parent, but that's the only time I've ever asked, whether or not it was all right. That was just their one caveat. It's okay, say whatever you want, just don't say anything bad about Mom.
I had a conversation with my kids after they saw that bit and were asking questions about it, and it came down to, hey, you like that new bike?
My son was able to negotiate a 10% cut of all of my comedy takings, which he does get paid, so he's fine with it.
Let's see, what else have we got here? I do want to talk just a little bit about the Lauren Boebert thing. Are we completely up to speed? Are we completely up to speed on that?
Yeah.
If not, I'll let you know. She's at Beetlejuice the musical in Denver. She's there with a date. She's vaping, she's singing loud, she's waving her arms. There's a pregnant woman behind her who asks her please not to vape. She told the woman to F off, according to the woman, who had no idea who she was, that she was the congresswoman from the 3rd district of Colorado. She later on in the 3rd, there were 3 videos. The 3rd video that came out, you see from inside the theater, and the night vision on those cameras is amazing. I didn't know night vision cameras could be that clear. And you see Boebert and her boyfriend basically going at it. I mean, he's groping her, and at one point, I think he's got her boob out. It looks like one of the shots that somebody like zoomed in on, and she's rubbing his crotch and the whole thing. So she's been slammed by, you mentioned Ann Coulter earlier. Ann Coulter said that she was a bimbo, and Meghan McCain called her trash, which surprised me. And they're the only Republicans who've spoken out. But what I find fascinating about this, and I wanted your take on it, is especially Kate's take on this, is I'm seeing a little bit of backlash online from people saying that we shouldn't be criticizing her or going after her for what it is that she did in terms of with the guy, the physical groping stuff, because it's slut shaming. And that she should not be slut shamed. Now,
okay. For me, I'm just mad because I'm like, why is she setting the bar for a date so high? Just go to the theater with my boyfriend. Like, you're now he's gonna want all of these things that, like, quite frankly, are not on the menu for me,
if you're buying tickets to Beetlejuice the musical, who do you think you're spending time with?
Well, It's an adult musical. I took my kids.
Well, no, it's
Very
a family
funny.
musical. You're supposed to take your kids.
Well, I mean, there are
just
some
can't
adult
enough.
themes and some adult language for sure.
Well, they
Like,
say they
It's
say
a PG. We'll
they
call it a
say
PG.
they say it's for ages 10 and up. It's for families, and you add families there. And that's one of the big criticisms is that she's, if you're gay, you're grooming kids to be gay. If you're LGBTQ, you're grooming kids. If you're a drag queen, you're grooming kids. And we need family values and take them to church and not a drag show and all this stuff.
Yeah.
And this is what she's doing in a theater with 3,000 people and kids.
Well, my issue is that it's just rude. I took my kids to that show. It cost me $260, I think.
Yeah.
So, and if that's going on in front of me, messing up my show, that's just rude. She's just being a jerk.
Okay, so what about the slut shaming issue? Is it to criticize her for that behavior? Is that I've never understood what's considered slut shaming.
Well, I think that's when you would. I mean, maybe we should let Kate answer this one.
Yeah, go ahead, Kate. I mean, body shaming, I understand.
Yeah.
Body shaming, I understand. Slut shaming, I
But I mean, I would think it's when you accuse, or when you try to shame women for having sex or being sexual.
In a theater with 3,000 people,
so my experience getting slut shamed growing up in rural Texas was like wearing overalls and showing too much skin, and so that's like very, as like a 12-year-old, they're like, that's a little too provocative, those overalls. So like, I don't know, but I want to talk about the positives of this. She's bringing attention to theater, right? Like, this is the most press theater has gotten in a really long time. And as an advocate of theater, I'm like, nobody was talking about theater like this, but how dare she upstage those actors?
Exactly. That's my point. Yeah.
Yeah, part of her defense was, pardon me for being a patron of the arts.
I'm just ready for her OnlyFans. Is she going to be the first campaign to have an OnlyFans? Like, how is she going to capitalize off of this?
And part of this, if you look at it, again, going back to the slut shaming part of it is that nobody's really criticizing the guy. She broke up with the guy, and she says she broke up with him because she didn't know he was a Democrat. He's a Democrat.
And he owns a gay bar. That was enough controversy.
Wow.
Yeah, where they have drag shows.
So was he just like hate sexing her? Is that what was going on? He was just. I can't imagine what else those two might have had in common.
Oh well, I think we saw what they had in common.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
Was the gist of it, But it's
hey, Jeff did her right in the theater, didn't he?
Like, if you're gonna spend, because you're right, those tickets are expensive. Like, why get a hotel room? Like, why were they free tickets? And can we get on the comp list for that show? Because Damon's girls would like to see it, and
they'd like to see it again. Absolutely,
they'd love to see it again.
What's it cost to see a Broadway show now for decent seats? What are they getting?
Here.
I'm asking Kate in New York.
It's obscene. It's truly obscene. I mean, it depends on, because they do dynamic pricing, which is like however popular it is, they'll go up on the tickets that are left. And because I work in the arts, I can get the hookup on some shows. But I mean, anywhere from, they do like 40 under 40, and there's always different deals. But they can be $400 to $35 for the cheap seats, but a couple $100 usually for orchestra seats. It's crazy.
Now, my daughter just paid $400 to see Beyonce, so that's not that. I guess that's not considered that crazy.
Worth every penny.
I don't know. Well, $400. I have a hard time paying $400. Paying $400 to see a concert.
Yeah, me too.
I will tell you the most I've ever spent on tickets. I bought my daughter when Hamilton was all the rage, and when Hamilton came to San Francisco, and you could not get tickets, and I had an in and was able to get tickets because I had an in. I got her for Christmas orchestra seats and paid $2,000 for a pair of orchestra seats. That's the most I've ever spent for tickets. And that I go, this is Christmas. This is your birthday. This is when you get married. Is
that the same daughter who's paying to see Beyonce?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So she would have rather had better Beyonce tickets, because Beyonce, and I saw Hamilton with Lin-Manuel Miranda when he won the Genius Award the night, and it was like a huge standing ovation, original cast, flex. But Beyonce is better. like Beyonce, they teach classes. This is just, I am from Texas. She's from Texas. I've seen her in concert many times. And I don't even want to tell you, I spent an ungodly amount of money on Beyonce tickets in Houston and then decided I couldn't afford it, sold them, and they sold like that. And I sold them for twice as much as I bought them. And I thought I should have said it higher. Like,
I guess the question is, would any of us make out with Ann Coulter for Beyonce tickets?
Yes.
yes, yes, 100%.
My wife would encourage me to do so.
Yes.
My wife would be like, yeah, bring those tickets home, honey.
How far are you willing to go? Let's see, what else have we got here? Cassidy Hutchinson. You remember Cassidy Hutchinson, who testified before the January 6th Commission, aide to Mark Meadows, who basically told the truth. She was the whistleblower. You know, she had Trump's attorney who was telling her to not remember certain things. And then she got her own attorney and told the truth. Well, she's got a book coming out, and she says in the book that Rudy Giuliani groped her on January 6th. On January 6th.
That's the real tragedy of that day.
On January 6th. Wow. He stuck his hand in her blazer. It was backstage. They had like a tent set up behind the stage where Trump was doing the rally and all of his speakers were. And Giuliani comes up to her, and John Eastman, who is also been indicted, who is one of Trump's lawyers, is standing there and watching as Giuliani sticks his hand in her blazer and then sticks his hand up her skirt, and Eastman's grinning. She says Eastman's just grinning, and she just stormed out of. She just stormed out of the tent. But wow. I guess my question is, I remember when Giuliani was America's mayor.
I never bought that.
You never bought that?
Never bought it for a second.
No, I mean,
he looked and smelled like a fascist to me, and he still does.
No, because see, after 9/11, it's just, I just had such admiration for the way he handled things after 9/11. And I look at him now and I go, what the hell happened to you?
He fooled you around 9/11, I think. I think he's always been remember Abner Louima? That was on his watch.
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right.
I don't know.
He's always been
tell me what that is.
Abner Louima was a black man who was arrested in New York, and then he was sodomized to death with a plunger handle. And the cops, when they were doing it, said, you got used to, I forgot who the mayor was before that, but you got used to that time. This is Giuliani time.
David Dinkins was the mayor before
Dinkins,
that. Who was the first black mayor of New York.
Right.
Yeah.
You got used to Dinkins time. Now this is Giuliani time. They sodomized the man to death with a plunger handle. Yeah.
Oh my God.
That was on Giuliani's watch. Those were his boys.
But if you go back even further in his career, he started out as a federal prosecutor who was like, squeaky clean. They used to call him Elliot Ness because he went after the mob, and he, which is so ironic that now he's part of a RICO case when he brought so many RICO cases against them. I think he put the heads of the 5 families in prison.
Yeah,
he did it. I don't want to say single-handedly. He had teams behind him, but to go from that to groping a young woman, I think she's 27 or 26. To groping a young woman on January 6th, again of all days, on January 6th. It's just, what the hell happened to you? I mean, was this something that was already there?
I'm going to say this. We talk a lot about performers and artists having mental illness, and I'm speaking for myself as well, and politicians as well. Like, look at this theme right now. There's a lot of politicians with mental illness, and I always feel like to want that much attention and to be at that height of power, you have to have a certain level of narcissism. Mm-hmm. And that is like a little tipping the scales. There's healthy narcissism, but it is clear by a lot of his recent stuff that he's unwell. And
I wonder how much of that is age related, just because he is significantly older. I mean, what is he, like almost 80 now?
79,
79. All right. So he's
something like that. But I know 78, 79-year-olds who aren't sticking their hands up 27-year-old young women.
Sure. But there are 78, 79-year-olds with cognitive decline.
Actually, George H.W. Bush, towards the end, it came out that he was doing that to women.
Yep.
He's in a wheelchair.
Yep.
And what he would do is he would ask women, he's in a wheelchair and Barbara's with him. And like he'd meet a young woman someplace. Oh, Mr. President, it's so nice to meet you. And he'd go, you know who my favorite, that was his line. You know who my favorite magician is? And they'd go, who? And he'd go, David Copperfield. Grab in and grab their behinds.
That's just like being kind to the elderly, right? I mean, I grew up, like I said, rural South. I'm gonna blame a lot on that. But my mom, there was one year, and I was not 25, but there was a 75-year-old esteemed lawyer in town, and he said his wife organized for 3 young women. She's like, I'll pay you $50 or something. Like he wanted someone to cook for him, clean for him. And it was just a photo op and someone to sit on his lap and feed him or something. And, we did that. And it was like, as a young kid, my mom would be working and she would say, go eat at this bar. And someone goes, there's those dirty old perverts in there. And she's like, they're old. They'd fall off their bar stool. They can't catch her. She's like a young, sprightly thing. I'm like, that's just being a woman. I think you hit 85 and you can try to cop a feel on someone, but they have to be prime health, right? It has to be like someone who could take you out with, a single punch, right? You're so fragile. You're going to need a new hip. George W. Like that's the only age which you should do it.
Well, I know who I'm hiring to take care of me when I turn 80.
Let's see what else we got here. Trump posted on Truth Social, give me freedom or give me death.
Okay.
Problem.
I was gonna say those
can't have freedom. Like the old Eddie Izzard bit, cake or death? Death. All right.
Hey, are you guys following the Russell Brand story at all?
A little bit, yeah.
I am a little bit too. That he's been accused of doing some horrible things to women back when he was. Remember his Hot 5 Minutes?
Sure.
When he was in movies and it was married to Katy Perry and all of this stuff. And
wasn't he also a drug addict?
Oh yeah.
Was he? Was he an addict?
Oh yeah. For sure. Yes. Yeah. He was very public about his recovery and very made a lot of noise about his recovery and was very preachy about it.
I don't know how anyone could be surprised that this guy is being accused of sexual impropriety. It's to bring it full. He looks like Beetlejuice walked off the stage and just started roaming among us. Like he's got that energy. I don't know.
He's definitely. I mean, he really, his stage persona was always kind of slimy to me. But I laughed at it. Thought it was funny for a minute. Because I thought it was just a stage persona, but I don't know. I don't know the facts, but I know he's accused of some pretty horrible stuff.
Well, he's apparently been making millions of dollars off of his YouTube channel. He has 6.6 million followers, and what he does with his show is it's all conspiracy theories. It's all vaccines are bad, and
Yeah, he was like anti-mask, anti-vaccine. I mean, he's a prolific guy, and he's huge in Britain. I mean, huge.
6.6 million followers, and YouTube has cut him off. They cut him off yesterday. So all that income is gone. So I guess the next question is it fair to do that to someone based upon allegations? Now, it's different, from when you're convicted. Like Danny Masterson has been convicted of raping 2 women. His wife, by the way, filed for divorce yesterday. His wife filed for divorce. He's got 30, looking at 30 to life. Not looking at, he's got 30 to life.
After supporting him, wasn't she supporting him for a really long time?
Supporting him for a long time. Up to the bitter end, saying this will destroy our family.
But I mean, he's going to be gone for 30 years at minimum. I mean, I don't blame her for wanting to get on with her life.
Well, you know what? Let me ask you this. Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis are just being raked over the coals for writing a letter of support to the judge for him to try to get him a reduced sentence. And what they basically wrote about was how when they were doing that 70 show, he was the one who kept them away from drugs, who would say, no. There's a lot of hangers on when you're doing a series. And he would go, no, don't go with that guy. That guy, he's a coke guy. You don't want to be involved with him. He's a bad person. Or no, don't go to this party. Here's what happens at this party. And that's the gist of what it is they wrote about how he helped to keep them clean. And so based upon the fact that they wrote this, they're being raked over the coals. And they did that hostage video of an apology for having written it's the best way to describe it. It was like a hostage.
Yeah.
You know, for having written the letters of support. I mean, if this was your friend and your friend had just been convicted of this crime, however, your experience with your friend was that he kept you off drugs, would you write a letter? Hard question, huh?
Yeah, it's a very hard question.
I mean, you can not like what he did, but in terms of how he treated you, is there anything wrong with saying how he treated you? You're not endorsing. They weren't endorsing the fact that he was raped. I guess they wanted to say, look, there were things he did that were good. He did horrible things, but there were things that he did that were good things as well.
Well, nobody is all one thing. I mean, nobody.
Yeah. Even Hitler was good to his dogs.
Exactly. Nobody's all one thing. So it's really hard. I don't know that I would, especially in their position. I don't have any clout to lend. You know, I don't have any celebrity to lend, unless you're talking about among local comics. Those are the only people that know me. But I don't know. I wouldn't risk it. Probably not. No. But I don't know.
So that's the kind of friend you are.
Don't get arrested, Brian.
People get so upset when they are like asked to think like at all, because it's like Damon saying, like, the idea that this guy, this is just all he is and it's all he's ever been. You know, everybody is somebody's son. Nobody is one thing in this. I would write the letter, but I'd be coming from this place of the other thing that I've thought about, and my wife and I have talked about this, is I just hate our criminal justice system. I don't want anybody, even if they've done what he's done, putting him in a cage for 30 years is not the answer. It's not what I want for him.
Mm-hmm. So what's happening? I mean, he raped these women.
I mean, and he deserves to be rehabilitated, not put in a box for 30 years. That's not how we build our culture.
Sex offenders statistically are not able to be rehabilitated. That's why I just don't want to buy into that kind of thinking. It's just not how I'm going to live life.
I don't know the details of his trial, and sorry to cut you off, Justin, but this has been one of my favorite conversations of, like, because I think I'm very liberal, and I know I'm all for prison reform. My boyfriend is a formerly incarcerated comic, right? Like, that he does a lot of stand up about that.
We all are.
Yeah.
But I think, like, I was having a conversation, and I don't think everyone should be rehabilitated. You know, like, there's some serial killers that don't. And then it's like, when you look at the nature of what these sexual offense, I'm not too privy with the case, but it's like, you know, there's some where people are 16, 17. I will say my personal take on the Army Hammer. Psycho Crazy, watch that documentary on HBO.
Oh, man.
Like, but it's also like, this is the making of a villain. Like, it gave the backstory, and I'm like, this is like generational psychosis and trauma, and like learn a bit. And that's a part of the conversations that we're not welcome, like, that's not being included. And what Damon said about, you know, I know a lot of people who've done terrible things, and I still can say, well, they did this, but if I was famous, would I don't, to bring that much attention to me? You know, I don't know.
Yeah,
well, that's the other part, is just like, I think people get surprised when two people make a blunder this badly based on the culture that we're living in today. Part of why we get angry at them is just this part of us that says, like, how on earth could you have thought that was going to go over well? Just how on earth? And then we kind of like roll our emotions all the way past just the idea of course you write a letter for your friend. Everyone's a human being. At least I do. Everyone is a human being. And when you send people to jail, taking away their humanity just doesn't have to be part of it. We should be doing better. We need to be doing better.
I'm with you 100% on that.
You don't think that there are people who, for our own safety and for the good of society, need to be locked away?
But they don't need to necessarily be tossed in a cold cage and fed slop and generally made to do slave labor.
Yeah, you do not need to dehumanize people. You can have a safe society.
But some people
is just so harmful.
especially for the Bay Area. We need to take San Quentin back just for the real estate. You know, those are the best views in the city, guys. Those are the best views, and we're wasting them. We're just wasting them on little cells. But I have to say, this is a tangent. My boyfriend watches a lot of TikTok on jail food, and there are these jail food chefs. I think there should be a TV show on TikTok jail food chefs. They make
That's a
gourmet
great
stuff
idea.
out of commissary food, and it is insane and looks disgusting, but also intriguing, you know?
Yeah, I've seen a couple, and it does. Your description is spot on. I want to try it, but I'm kind of afraid.
I did.
Yeah.
No
I
more
did a part-
Great British Bake Off, you know? Give us Behind Bars Bake Off.
I did a part in the last Venom movie we shot a couple of years ago, and my stuff was all shot at San Quentin. I played a reporter, and I had to stand in front of San Quentin. I spent 3 days at San Quentin. And the thing that I found the most fascinating about San Quentin is that there's a gift shop. There's a gift shop at San Quentin. And I wanted to go in there, but I just couldn't bring
Wait, for people to buy things and like bring in?
I haven't a clue. The first thing I thought was, what are they selling? Calendars? I mean,
Yeah, if I'm in San Quentin, by the way, and any of you bring me like a snow globe of San Quentin, I'm gonna kill you. I'm already in jail. Like,
So my boyfriend is in the room, and he goes, it's for visits. It's for people
right,
visiting.
it's for visits, right?
Right.
Yeah.
But that's right, Justin. I think it's like, you don't want to, but also wasn't Manson in there? Like there were a bunch of famous people in there.
Manson wasn't there. Manson
He was Vacaville, wasn't he?
Oh.
He was somewhere like that.
I think Vacaville State Hospital.
If you're on death row, that's where you are.
Yeah.
In California, on death row, you go to San Quentin. There were lots. Scott Peterson is there. Yeah, the Night Stalker was there. So people who are on death row, that's where you go.
If Scott Peterson were in Texas, he would be executed by now.
Oh yeah.
Oh
sure.
yeah, he'd been executed years ago.
It is. I mean, we execute more people than anyone. It's funny.
Well, he might not. He's white. I mean.
Good point. Fair.
He might have gotten an appeal.
He might have.
He'd probably still be in his boat, actually. It's fine.
Yeah, Texas, it's like, the thing that made me the most sick about Texas, and I don't know, maybe you can tell me if it's any better. I remember probably like 20 years ago when there was a guy who was on death row, and the basis for his appeal was that his attorney was actually asleep and snoring in court during parts of testimony, asleep and snoring, and the jury heard him, and they still gave this guy death. And what the appellate court ruled was that the attorney was awake during the important parts. I'm not kidding.
Well, we don't know what the evidence against the guy was. I mean, it may have been overwhelming.
Still,
yeah, I agree. It's incompetent. He should have gotten at least another trial based on ineffective assistance of counsel.
So is it still that bad, Kate? Is it still that bad?
I mean, I have never been to jail. As a white woman, I think I would have to do something really terrible. But I think that, we should spend more money on education than prison. I think it's like, and the lawyers, the public defenders and everything, they're so overworked and underpaid. And you've got nonprofits who are doing really good work to try to help people. But,
the thing about the death penalty is it's almost overwhelmingly applied to poor people. I mean, and you can make arguments about, well, they're the ones committing the crime, but no, they're the ones that have the worst lawyers. They're the ones that are in the most desperate situations. They're the ones that are most likely to be just gobbled up by the bureaucracy because they can't afford to get good representation. It's across the board. Even if you don't factor in race, and if you factor in race, people of color are more likely as well. But if you eliminate that, poor white people are much more likely than than rich white people to get the death penalty. There's two levels to it. There's economics and race that are both just applied inequitably.
Well, that's how it is.
That's for the same crimes, right, Damon?
For the same crimes, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't have to be a death penalty. I mean, look at that Brock Turner kid.
Yeah.
Who raped that young woman who was intoxicated, and the judge gave him probation because he didn't want to ruin his life.
Yeah.
And you want to tell me if that was an 18-year-old black kid who had raped a drunk woman that the judge would have worried about, ruining
Yeah,
his
this
life?
happened at Stanford. If that kid had come from East Palo Alto, forget
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Well,
The judge
while we're
told
talking
him
about the
promising young
justice
man.
system, this is a story that ticks me off. Okay, so the state legislature has passed a bill that if the governor signs it, this will be the law in California. And what it is that you can get speeding tickets. They're going to set up speeding cameras so that if you are caught on camera going faster than going 11 miles faster than the speed limit, you will get mailed a $50 ticket. If you were going 16 to 25 miles over, it's a $100 ticket. $200 for 26 to 99 miles over. $500 if you're going over 100 miles over. And so they say that the rationale for this is the CDC says that speeding causes 26% of fatal crashes. So that's what they're claiming. But I look at it as this is revenue enhancement. This is because cops can't be everywhere to catch everybody. So how do you defend yourself against getting a ticket like that? How do you prove you didn't do it? How do you argue your way out of this ticket? You're getting a picture. What do? You go into court with your picture and say, I wasn't speeding on this day? How do we know these cameras are accurate? It's just this kind of stuff. It's so big brother.
Well, how do you know the cop's account of things is accurate?
Well, you can drag the cop on the stand and question him. You can't drag the camera on the stand and question it. You can't. I mean, it violates due process, in my opinion. It's a 14th Amendment problem. It's also a Fifth Amendment problem. The court I think the Goldsmith case in like 2013 or 14 ruled red light cameras at least to be constitutional. Before that, a lot of them were getting tossed out on constitutional grounds because you can't question the camera.
We should mention Damon's an attorney as well as a comic.
I just
I literally was about to say,
what does questioning
like,
have to do with it?
Well,
because like cops make mistakes and do things.
Yes, they do, but you can put them on the stand and you can cross-examine them and you can confront them with different evidence. And
but that never works.
I've won lots of traffic cases, man. Lots of traffic. Cops are. I mean, you're right in that cops do automatically kind of get a.
And they're just using a speeding gun. They're just using technology.
Sure, they are
using their eyes.
Sure, they are.
So how does the argument really change? The argument doesn't change from, hey, I think your technology that you were holding in your hand is bad, to I think that technology up on that pole is bad. It's the same fundamental argument.
Maybe it is, but it's still, you've got a human operating it, and you've also, the person is being pulled over immediately in the case of the cop. So you have a little bit more evidence as to whether or not they were actually in control of the vehicle when it happened.
I don't think it matters. You see, I'm really in favor of things like this because I hate.
Really?
Yeah, I hate this.
I didn't know you were a fascist, Justin.
I hate.
That's disappointing.
This system of cat and mouse that we have in our society of like, we're going to do the thing we know is wrong because we don't think somebody is watching. I want people's cars to turn us in. Our cars shouldn't even go over 70 miles an hour. Why do we have these machines in which the fastest you're allowed to go is 70 miles an hour, but this thing goes 140? Why
in Texas, you can go 85 an hour, and it's like kind of known you can go 10 over without getting a speed limit. There's a lot of highways in Texas that are 85, which is crazy.
I just don't like this system we have in which we we turn cops in the government into parents. And
so you would rather turn machines into parents? Is that your argument?
Yes, I would rather turn machines into parents. I would like it. Your car knows where you are. I would absolutely.
Your car doesn't know a damn thing. Your car is programmed to do things.
If your car
doesn't have any judgment, your car's not making judgment calls. It can't think.
Maybe he has Herbie, the bug.
Maybe.
Your car knows if you're on the freeway or not. And if you're going 20 miles over the speed limit, it should just write you a ticket. I'm totally for that.
I'm not buying that car. And if I buy that car, that's the first thing I disable.
On the safety thing, apparently they tried this in New York City. and speeding went down by 73%. Speeding went down by 73%.
Well, I mean,
People do
that's
things
probably
just
the
to
nexus
get
the court
away
will
with
use
it.
to make it constitutional.
So, well, we'll see. But it all comes down to Gavin Newsom. If Gavin signs it, the way it's going to work first is it'll start as early as January of 2024. There's going to be a pilot program for 6 months. The pilot program is going to be in San Francisco, Oakland, San Jose, Los Angeles, and Long Beach. Those are the 5 places where it's going to be.
Let's
And
invest. Who wants to invest in some ski masks and paintball guns with me? Let's go.
or some bogus license plates.
Exactly.
They're catching it. See, that's the other thing too. It's like, I get a picture from speeding 3 weeks from now. I don't remember that I was driving there. I don't know how fast I was going. Again, how can you? I guess my problem, Justin, is how do you defend yourself? I mean, you should always have the right to be able to defend yourself against an accusation. How do you defend yourself if you get a ticket?
Oh, give an example of how you could defend yourself. Again, like you're kind of like setting up this scenario in which it's like, well, what was it? You weren't on that street. You weren't actually speeding. Like, what is it you're gonna like walk in there? You had to get somewhere quickly. Your pregnant wife was giving birth in the passenger seat. Like, what is the excuse?
I don't know what the excuse is. It depends on what the circumstances.
But we also don't know that it happened.
Well, that's the other issue too. Is like, how do I prove that I wasn't speeding?
You can't prove a negative.
It's like Americans have gone through this interesting like thing in which I remember like 15, 20 years ago, Americans were generally just blown away by the idea of closed circuit filming that happens in Europe that's prevalent, especially in London and big cities. There are cameras everywhere. And everyone was like, that's insane. We can't have anything like that. And now we have that, except it's just us on our phones. And everyone recognizes, oh, police need to be filmed. Traffic needs to be filmed. Children need to be filmed. Everything actually needs to be filmed. And this is the same thing.
Justin's installing restroom cams. You heard it here first.
The generation coming up now cares nothing about privacy.
No, not really.
This isn't a privacy issue. Privacy has nothing to do with you knowingly breaking the law and wanting to get away with it.
Well, you're assuming that it's knowingly.
You're on a public highway.
You're assuming that it's knowingly.
Let me ask you this, Justin. Why is the penalty money?
The penalty doesn't, I mean, if we're going to talk through like hypotheticals, I'm fine with the penalty not being money.
Okay. So what would the penalty be for speeding? What would be an appropriate?
I mean, this kind of gets back to like, I kind of, there's this tendency that because I'm against cash bail. I'm against our criminal justice system and almost always this way. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, if we're going to come at it from that point of view, yeah, I would love for you to be able, and I think we do this to a certain degree, to be able to go to a class and have that wiped out. I'm totally good with that. And I'm good with it more than once.
I know that they have those classes in Texas because I've taken many defensive drivers classes, and I have taken a couple. But I think there's so many people with Teslas and fancy cars and the world.
Oh, lock them up. I'm for that.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think it's like you should tax them based on the car. And if it's
I'm totally for that too.
A jalopy and it's just trying to get to work and they're late or whatever, like you should, maybe like give them a little lower so they could get their light.
Absolutely. All penalties, whether it's time, whether it's money, whether it's some sort of effort, volunteerism, class, whatever you want to call it, should absolutely be based on your economic circumstances. Now, I have no idea how we do such a thing. Like it does take a picture of like your Yugo or something and it gives you $5. But then if you have Tesla, it charges you $300. Yeah, I love that. And honestly, I know we could get to that place, but I'm totally for that.
Let's end with this, because Kate mentioned Tesla. Elon Musk, in a conversation in a live stream with Benjamin Netanyahu, says that he is considering having a monthly subscription fee to use Twitter, or X as it's called now, that if you want to use the service, you're going to have to pay monthly. And the rationale he gives is it's the only way to stop bots.
Okay.
The only way to eliminate bots is by having it be a paid subscription service. So are you willing to pay Elon Musk to use Twitter? I'm not.
No. The only thing I use
never
Twitter
have.
for is occasionally saying rude things to politicians. That's what I do with it. That's all I do with it. I try to get thrown off. I stalk Kevin McCarthy all the time on Twitter and just say horrible things every chance I get.
Yeah, I do that with Jim
I
Jordan.
love the veil being pulled away from this absolute a-hole. I love that this guy who supposedly is some sort of genius, and we do this everywhere. So it's not even, I'm going to pick on Elon, but it's not his thing, is because you did this one thing over here really, really well by all accounts. Now you can do anything really, really well. And I read somewhere, I can't absolutely say whether this is true or not, but that company has lost 90% of its value. Like, that this
X?
is going to go down.
Twitter?
Yeah, X.
Well,
Since he
the
bought it.
branding, the rebranding.
This is going to go down as one of the just most egotistical business debacles of this century.
This is the new Coke of the 21st century.
Right. He's going to bring back Twitter Classic. Maybe this is just a long exercise to bring back Twitter Classic.
It's brilliant.
Oh man, I'm going to pitch that idea. Now I have to get a Twitter account. I have.
And now you got to pay for it. All
I
right.
got $80.
So where's everybody playing? Kate, where can people come and see you?
I am, doing random shows in New York and going to Hudson Valley in a couple of weeks. You can find me at Kate Robards on Instagram and Twitter and all those fun things.
Kate Robards.
I'm not on Twitter. I'm actually not on Twitter, Instagram, and whatever else. I don't know. TikTok.
You got a website, right?
And a website, yeah. Just my name.
Okay, plug your website. Okay, Damon, how you doing? I know you've been at it before, but you were ill.
I was ill, and then I had a serious family issue. I'm getting back into it. My bookings will be on my website, DamonFerguson.com, or also myfirstcomedyalbum.com. You can download it there, and then it also has my my bookings on that as well. So check it out. Thank you.
Okay, Justin, you're back from a little hiatus.
I am. I'm traveling the rest of this month. I have 2 winery shows up in Sonoma and Napa in October on the 15th and 26th. The dates are on my Instagram. You can find me there. Justin Lockwood. Come and see it. It's going to be fun.
Okay, and I'm doing Grandma and Me, the new show I was talking about earlier at the Marsh in Berkeley on Saturday night. So for tickets, go to themarsh.org, or you can go to briancopeland.com. Daymon Ferguson, Kate Robards. Kate, again, thanks for coming. Kate, we had a comic who called in at the last minute who was sick, and I'm hoping he's not getting the new COVID variant that's out, because everybody's starting to get. I'm literally
I had
going to get a shot right now.
I had it.
Going for a shot. It took me a week to get an appointment for a shot because not everybody.
Wow.
I had the recent variant. I had it about 2 weeks ago.
Did you?
How bad was it?
Not bad. I mean, I'm up to date on all vaccines, and I got on Paxlovid right away, so I didn't feel great, but it wasn't debilitating.
Well, because they say the new one, no matter how vaccinated you are, it's getting around the.
Maybe
it can help you. You need the new vaccine, is what it's saying.
Well,
So
I can't get it for a couple more months because I just had it.
No, well, Kate, thanks for jumping in at the last minute. I appreciate it.
Thanks, y'all. Y'all are so funny. Talk to you later.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Bye.
Justin, good to see you, pal. I'll see
You
you
too, man.
tomorrow.
You guys.
All right, that's going to do it for us. Again, if you would like to see the show live on YouTube, we record on Wednesday right now on YouTube and on the audio version of this, and we drop on Thursdays. If we have 1,000 subscribers to the YouTube channel, then we can do it live, which would be great. So it would be great to have the interaction of people who watch the show. You got a comment, you got a question, you want to chime in on something we're talking about, you can do that. But we need 1,000. We need 1,000 subscribers. It costs you absolutely nothing. So please subscribe. I will check you out next week. Till then, be kind to your neighbor who knows where you live.